Alrighty guys, this is just a pure installation process for these iBuyPower cable combs. So when you get them out of the box, you're going to have this nice little foam dealy hooky majigger bobber thing. And you just, everything's nice and encased in there. Pretty easy to push out and push back in to hold all your clips into one spot. Each clip comes with an in and an out. And this is really important. So in is like the power and signal coming into the clip, out is leaving to go to, say, the next clip. If you're not going to the next clip, then there's no reason to use out. I don't know if you'd really want to do this, but if you only bought one of these, you would only use the in. What they use is they've got a few of these cables. So we've got these longer type cables for doing the longer stretches. And then there's a passel of these really short type patch cables to do your kind of shorter connections. So this little connection here is really tiny. And be careful, because if you push too hard, you can actually bend this out kind of easily. I actually already did I can feel it bending. So when you push a connector in, my recommendation is stick a thumb right here behind it. Then you can grab your cable. I'm going to go ahead and go into the out like I'm continuing this chain. You'll see that the little 3 metal pins will usually face up top because there's a little notch here in the center that lines up with the notch on the bottom here. And so all you have to do, don't try to force it. Sometimes they get a little sticky. Just wiggle. Wiggle up and down until it just slides nice and gently in. If you just wiggle side to side and up and down gently until it just slides right in, it's a lot easier. So I'll have in power from the motherboard or whatever going in. Then I will go out, get my next cable comb, I will go in. So out always goes to in. And in on your first clip will go to that power connection. So pretty straightforward concept right there for connecting these together. Now iBuyPower recommends you plan your connections out ahead of time, and I definitely recommend the same thing. So if you notice, I decided to stagger my cables, and I knew I was going to be doing that from the get-go. So here's cable number 1, comb number 2, cable comb number 3, cable comb number 4. I knew I wanted to bring my wire from the base of the cable to come in. So you notice all of my ins are facing that way. All of my outs are facing this way. Towards the bottom of the camera, all the ends are facing towards the back of the case there. And so there you go. Here's my first cable actually coming in. It's either, well, it might be connecting. I think this is my power one, but we'll get to that here in just a second. And then I'm going out, in, out, in, out, in. So actually I must be going, and then I'm going out from this cable comb and coming to my other ones up here up top since I have an SLI setup. So make sure you plan that out. Keep everything facing the same direction. I would also recommend doing like what I did. I actually unplugged these two and then just fold them back up. One more little trick that I might recommend. These little patch cables are the shorter ones, but they're still pretty long. What I would kind of say you might want to consider doing is if you were to run like a zip tie or a cable tie through the middle of your cables. So and so that way it doesn't show on the outside. If I was to put this zip tie right through the middle like this, then what I could do is I could bring all these guys in close and tie them to the back of my cable like so to try to help hide them a little bit. So now I've got a zip tie holding this little cable bundle here, but when I fold this back up, this little loose cable came loose. But when I fold it back up, I can hopefully try to hide these directly behind the cables. And you can't see now the zip tie or the cable tie that I'm using because it's behind the first row of wires. Just a thought. Let's go ahead and talk now about that power connection, and then that'll be good to go. Okay guys, final step. Once you do need to make sure you've got these connected to a LED controller. Since my motherboard doesn't have the 5-volt addressables built into it, I'm using this Lamptron CL420, which basically has every kind of LED connection controller imaginable. So it's really straightforward. This is one thing I really like about what iBuyPower did. This little controller, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit on that. This little controller just has 5 individual little pin connections, kind of like how you'd plug into the, the power LED button into your motherboard. So it's got 3 of these little connections here. There we go. And it's exactly that. There's a 5-volt connection. The D stands for data. The GND is the ground. This is the order that they should plug in to any 5-volt addressable. The 5-volt will sometimes have a plus sign that you plug into, like this controller I have has, or it'll actually say 5V like on a lot of motherboards. The data is usually in the middle, the ground is on the other end. Just 3 pins. If you have 4 pins to connect to, you are probably connecting to a just standard 12-volt RGB connector, and it'll probably burn these combs out. So don't do that. Make sure it says 5 volts somewhere, and that way, even if you plug them in wrong, you at least have a good chance you won't burn them out instantly. So make sure that you connect them in the right way. Alright guys, so one thing I did want to address, there's one thing I'd like to see iBuyPower do just a little differently with these cable combs. So if I've got connections like this where I've got bam, 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 and they're really close, this is the shorter patch cable, but look at how long that is. I mean, I'm still going to have a ton of cable slack that I'm going to have to do to do something with from making all these connections. If I was to make the connection here, I only need about that much cable. I would like to see guys maybe just add about, what's here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So maybe about 8 of these, just for good measure, of these really short, like just a really short one where you're just, because like even, like if I come up here to my motherboard connection, I've got 2 combs that are really close there too. So yeah, just some really, really short, like inch-long patches, so that there's not a bunch of extra cable slack that then I've got to figure out what to do with it after the fact. There you go, guys. That's your install guide for these iBuyPower RGB cable combs. I have a review that'll be somewhere up in there for the actual lighting effects and awards, so check that out. I'll catch you later.